Steve Young went on Dan Patrick's show, and Dan asked him what his thoughts were on the Niners' current quarterback. Good line of questioning. Steve Young, always thoughtful, always balanced, starts with something positive, very positive. He's so enthusiastic. And then in a very positive, enthusiastic way, he lays out the other side of it. It's not necessarily the negative side, but the side where the real side, the side where Purdy still has to prove himself, because Steve Young has the highest standards, top 10 quarterback all time. So do you want to sort of summarize it, or should I?
You go ahead and summarize it, and I'll give my opinions on it.
So he starts by saying that essentially Brock Purdy is like Luke Skywalker. He has the force. Forget what he looks like. Forget his skill set. NFL playing quarterback essentially is about processing quickly. And he can do it. He's 23. He can freaking do it. I don't know how. He's Luke Skywalker. You could call him Harry Potter, whatever. He's got Peter Pan. He's got magic powers that only he has. And it's hard. He said it's like, if people could spot the force, people like him wouldn't drop to the end of the draft. So the force is throwing with anticipation, seeing the field, making reads quickly. He does all that in elite level. Just being in the league for a long time doesn't necessarily teach you how to do it. It's almost like a God-given skill or a natural ability. Mm-hmm. He has it. So, Steve gave him that. He was saying basically the thing is he has to throw with anticipation because he doesn't have that big arm. A guy like Josh Allen can be late and muscle it in where Brock Purdy can't. And where Steve, in a very generous way, says, and now Brock's going to have to show that like this skill set can kind of work coming from behind. Because, it's one thing to like throw with anticipation when you're winning, but when you're losing, all of a sudden you have to make these throws in anticipation. You have to make these plays. And so that's where you've seen some of the turnovers. And what else did he say about Big Brock Purdy?
He said that if a guy like CJ Stroud can go 3 for 3 to get a scoring drive in, Brock might have to go 5 for 5 to make that happen.
That's right.
So he has to play a little bit more perfect for a little bit longer because of some possible limitations to his game.
Yeah. And the final thing he says is if he wants to be considered elite, there are 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the NFL who are truly elite, who if you give them the ball at the end of the game when they're losing, they're going to win. Most likely. That's the way he put it. And he, in a very gracious way, said Brock hasn't proven that yet, which he hasn't. So that is the real measure of an elite quarterback. He says he has the force. He admits he doesn't have the most overwhelming skill set. And he admits that he has something to prove, which we all know he does. Coming from behind. That's the true measure of a great quarterback. And Steve said it's kind of like in the NBA where they're like 5 or 6 superstars who, if you give them the ball down the stretch, they're probably going to win the game.
Yeah, most certainly. I don't think Steve Young's saying anything that we haven't said or most people haven't thought.
It's validating, though.
It is, but it's funny because if Steve Young or Joe Montana say something that people agree with, everybody wants to like, see, he says this about this player, that means it's true. But the moment that they say something that might be construed as disparaging, people don't want to talk about it. Do you realize that thing or that interview came out on the 20th? No. If Steve Young came at this is actually my point. If Steve Young had came out and said all good things on the 20th, everybody would have known about it. Everybody would have retweeted it. Everybody would have been like, I told you so, and all these other things. I don't think he said anything bad about Brock. I think he was real about Brock. And I actually think he's right in the sense that Brock, he calls it the force and he describes it as like Luke Skywalker and whatever else. Really what he's saying is he has an it factor. And we all know what that means. He has an it factor. He has a swagger. He has a confidence.
I like the force better than the it factor.
Okay, that's fine. That's force. Well, the it factor, I guess, does also include meaning you can win if the game's on the line and your right arm can deliver time and time again. So he doesn't fully have that yet. Maybe he'll earn that. Maybe we'll see it this week. But he does have a confidence, a swagger, and a calmness to his game that a Jimmy Garoppolo say did not have. So I see that, but he is right. Brock Purdy says it himself he does need to be a little bit more perfect than everybody else because he doesn't have the rocket arm. He can't be late. He has to be a perfect processor. And when he is perfect, oh my gosh, it's 30 plus points a game and the 49ers are rolling. And when it's not perfect, it can look really bad. And it's like, well, dude, what the hell was that throw? Really, he read something. He went with anticipation, and the throw was maybe the wrong decision. Not necessarily a bad throw, but because he has to make the decision so early, it's just the wrong decision. And if you get caught in that, you can have a bad pick six or a couple bad picks at the end of a game like we saw against Minnesota or what have you. So I don't know. I don't think he said anything that I haven't already thought.
Sure. I guess if I were Brock Purdy and Steve Young said I had the force, I'd be blushing. Like, I'd be so happy. It's such high praise coming from Steve Young.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't mean he thinks that Brock's as good as he was, because Steve was more than just a processor. Steve was a hell of an athlete on a different level than Brock. Still, it's really high praise. And I like the way Steve can lay out the full picture. Joe Montana can't do that. No offense to Joe, but Steve is one of the best quarterback analysts in the NFL. Sometimes I don't understand what he's talking about, but maybe that's on me because he's really smart. But this time he laid it out in very plain terms. And yeah, it's nothing we hadn't said before, but it's nice when Steve Young lays it out. It's like, well, that's just what it is then, I guess, because I agree with it. So there you go.
Yeah, because I agree with it. So that's what it is. Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is.
You know what? Here's one thing that I also find very interesting. Everybody has a bias, whether you want to or not, whether it's meant to be there or not. And when you hear these ex-professional quarterbacks talk about certain players, Brock Purdy, any quarterback, they always tend to lean towards the players that they identify with, players that remind them of themselves. Mm-hmm. Kurt Warner is a really good example of this. Kurt Warner, the way that he talks about Brock Purdy, you can tell that he identifies with Brock Purdy because, hey, I was kind of kicked out of the league. I wasn't supposed to be anything special. I had to fight for everything. And so he respects Brock Purdy for being able to do that. He knows how hard it is to do that, how hard it is to make a dent in the league when you weren't expected to be that guy. And so you can tell that he really genuinely likes Brock Purdy and enjoys Brock Purdy. And a lot of it is because he identifies with Brock Purdy's story because it's similar to his. So I think that a lot of quarterbacks, ex-players, quarterbacks, whatever, they gravitate towards players that remind them of themselves.
No question. Brother Bob, so does this make Hall of Fame Steve Young a hater? Yeah, is he a hater? We got to know. Ryan G. Hensley Show. What up, Ryan? Say one nice thing about each other.
We already did. We said we loved each other.
I said I like his style. I like his moves. I like his face. I like his smile. I like his general disposition. I feel all that.